Good morning and welcome. So let's begin by just rocking back and forth a little bit on your sitting bones so that you can feel more about how your weight is distributed. And then you can bring your hands under your buttocks and pull with your fingers, pull the muscles out a little to the sides and also a little bit back. And that will make the weight on your sitting bones even more clear. And then you want to rock forward enough so that you have a lumbar arch, a little space behind your waistline. And then you lift your chest from there. So there was a question about asymmetries. And I know for most of us, we have asymmetries in the musculature of the spine, and in particular, the psoas muscle, which goes along the front of the spine. So it's deep underneath your abdominal organs and goes down from about the waistline area on the spine into the pelvis, and then out through the front of the hip joint to attach onto your femur bone. And it's a very strong muscle, but one that's hard to feel because it's so deep. So if there's an asymmetry in that muscle, it can really affect your alignment. So having said that, let's change the crossing of the legs. So whatever leg you had in front, change it to the other side and see if that makes your pelvis feel a little different. It's a good thing to do, especially if you spend much time sitting on the floor. So once again, lift your spine from the pelvis, shoulder blades pulling together slightly, and your face and neck and head soft. And then just feel your breath. I think it's very important before a practice, as part of the practice, an essential part is to just bring the awareness into the body in this way. So we gather all the parts together, all the different parts of the body, some of which may be uncomfortable, some of them are neutral, some of them feel really good. And you notice all those details, but you also get a sense of the whole body as an integrated, alive housing for your experience of life. Okay, let's chant the invocation, Om Purnamada, which is the one that honors completion. And we're doing it, of course, for the completion of 2021. So keep your tall posture and take a breath in, and we'll chant one Om first and then the invocation 3 times. Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. And sit with your eyes closed for a moment just to feel your body having done the chant. Singing in any way, and especially singing sacred syllables, will change the vibration inside your body. Okay, so open your eyes and let's do a little bit of breathing awareness to start out. So first of all, feel a normal breath breathing through your nose, and especially notice the movement of your ribs and how the breath fills the lungs and pushes out against the edges of the rib cage as the lungs are expanding. Okay, and now let's especially feel the elongation aspect of the breath. So if you can picture your spine, even from the top of your neck down to your pelvic floor, which really is the length of the spine, notice that on the inhalation, there is an expansion, there's a lift, there's a lengthening that goes on, partly because the ribs have to move and they actually massage the spine a little bit in that movement. So just feel now the lengthening aspect of the breath on the inhale. And you can feel that both at the front and the back. And now let's notice the expansion front to back. So your sternum will move forward, your back ribs will broaden and push back a little bit as the lungs fill. And now let's observe the widening aspect of the breath, feeling the side ribs go out and back in again with each breath. Okay, and open your eyes. And we'll come back to that later in the class. Again, circle your shoulders. And then with your chest lifted, shoulders pulled a little bit back, turn your head left and right. And then look straight ahead and lift your head to look at the ceiling and pull your chin down to your chest. Each of these movements stretches the neck, the muscles of the neck, and mobilizes the vertebrae. So just feel that as you do it. And then reach your right hand out to the side, touch the mat, take your head to the left shoulder, feeling the stretch across the side of your neck and possibly down into your shoulder. Reaching out through the top of your head, also press into the floor with your fingers. So there's an active elongation of that whole line. And then turn your head to look down, but keep it tilted. So all you do is just rotate your chin and your nose down toward the ceiling, but still tilt towards the right shoulder, left shoulder. And then turn your head to look up, also still tilting. So when you look up, it's not a movement of the top of your head going back. It's really your chin and your face tipping up toward the ceiling. And then come back to center, and we'll do the other side. Touch the floor with your left fingertips, take your head to the right shoulder, and just allow that pull to stretch the whole side of your neck and down across the shoulder. So the reason we look different directions is that this muscle has 3 parts. So we get the middle one as we look straight ahead, and now you look down and you get the back one. You'll feel the stretch kind of change its location. And then turn to look up, but you still have the top of your head tilted towards your shoulder. And then back up and circle both shoulders. And if you want, you can take your fingers and just rub a little bit circular motion into those muscles that you just stretched at the side of your neck. Okay, now full curve and arch of the spine. Lean back a little bit onto your fingertips behind you and lift your chest and head. Inhaling and exhaling, come forward. Inhaling, look up, and go back and forth at a comfortable pace. Stretching alternately the back of the spine and the front of the spine. Okay, back up to center. And in that particular stretch, most of us really need to emphasize the front stretch, the stretch of the front spine, because so much of our lives involves bending forward more than bending back. So when you lift your chest, we'll do it one more time with just a little more specific awareness. When you lift your chest, you're really trying to expand your spine up out of the pelvis. And this goes along with your the concept that we often talk about, up and out. So let's do it one more time with your hands pressing down into your hip area, the top of the thighs. So press with the heel of your hand down quite firmly and lift your spine up and out of the pelvis. Hopefully you'll feel increased length in the lower half of your spine, which is the part that usually gets compressed all day long. Keep that lift as you let go and bring your hands behind you, and then lift your chest and heart way up as high as you can. Tilt your head slightly back, not dropping it back, because that will close off your breath and your ability to speak. So test yourself now as we do this one more time and hold it just a little longer in this back bend shape. The shoulder blades are squeezing together. Your ribs are lifting up away from the pelvis. Shoulder blades help the lift of the chest, and you look up and say a few words. Okay, we'll do that several times in the class. So that was a first step. All right, now change the crossing of your legs again. And inhale, lift your spine. Exhale, turn to the right, using one hand on the floor behind you, the other hand on the knee. And as you turn to the right, your left leg pulls into the hip socket to stabilize your pelvis. Feel your breath. Back to center. Inhale, lift again. Exhale, turn to the left. And back to center. And now do a few more turns on your own timing. Try to keep your head and spine really aligned over your pelvis, shoulders level, chest open in the front. Twisting is way more beneficial if your spine is long, because each little segment of the spine can do its share to bring you into a rather large range of motion in twisting. And that's what we want. We want each part of the spine to participate. I mean, even if you're, like, say, looking behind you on the street or driving your car, it does help to turn more than just your neck. It really does. So we want to include all the parts. Okay, now let's go down onto the balls now. We'll start out with the large balls under the front of your hips and go into the psoas and down into the thighs a little bit. So we're starting at the hip crease, but we're going to move down first and then up a little bit. So the balls can be either the easy grip or the playground balls. They're roughly 5 to 6 inches in diameter. And bring the balls underneath your hip crease and bring your arms onto the mat so that your forearms are supporting you. Your chest is a little lifted off the floor, which helps you breathe. And it also makes it easier to move. So once you've settled and you've got the balls in a good spot, then move your hips slowly to one side and back to center and slowly to the other side and back to center. So this is a slow movement, and this particular area is often not very tender, so you might think, well, what is this doing? It's making space in the hip joint, and it's working on the psoas muscle, which crosses the joint at this point, at this location. And it's getting us ready to go further down and further up for accessing more of that front line of strength and support. So now move your body forward. You can tuck your toes and push with your toes a little bit so that the balls come down onto the tops of your thighs. Now, if you're looking to understand asymmetries in your body, you can observe in this exercise whether one side feels like it's pressing into the ball more than the other side. That would indicate that that side of your pelvis tends to push forward. Really, really common. I think almost everybody has some version of this asymmetry. And the ball work over time can really help bring it back to center. All right, now let's move the balls up higher than the hip joint where we started. So you just bring the balls up just above your pubic bone and a little wider so they're coming to the side area of the lower abs. And this is where the psoas, again, is somewhat available underneath the abdominal organs and muscles. So you might feel it, especially more on one side. And then move the balls a little higher so that they're more just under your waistline area. And again, move side to side slowly. You need to move slowly to have time for the deeper structures to respond to the pressure of the ball and the movement. And I invite you to experiment on your own time with which part of this line that we're working on down the front of the body is the most helpful for you. And just always spend more time in that spot so you get the effect that you need. Okay, let's turn over onto your back and keep those same balls because we're going to do the two balls under the back as well. So lie on your back just to feel your hips. For me, I feel my abdominal organs and the front of my hips being more able to release into the floor, a feeling of settling. And do a couple of pelvic moves, like you can do tilting of the pelvis by pressing your sitting bones down, arching your lower back a little bit, that's the anterior tilt, and doing the opposite of pressing the waist down, lifting the bottom of your pelvis slightly off the floor, but not so that it's a whole action of lifting, but just a rocking motion. So you can do that, a basic pelvic tilt, and then you can add a circling movement that presses the outer edge of the pelvis into the floor sequentially around the circle, and do that a couple of times in each direction. So this is helpful in identifying and also, changing any kind of persistent asymmetry that might be there. Okay, now we're going to put the balls under the spine, and I'm going to recommend that you put one ball in the upper half and one ball in the lower half. You don't want to have the balls touching each other because then they can't move very much. So at least a couple of inches apart, and it's fine to have them more apart than that. Some of you may need to have a blanket under your head because it'll be more comfortable for your neck. So you can just have something within reach to do that if you need to. And if you have to keep rearranging the balls because they move as you lie down, then you just do that. So for me, I've got one ball in between my shoulder blades and the other ball just above my waist. So I'm in a gentle back bend. And you could do this with just one ball, but it's more gentle when you have two because it spreads out the, shape a little more. And then you can move your back, your whole back from side to side very slowly. Now, if you have a habit of doing your back with the smaller balls, one on each side of the spine, you're welcome to do that instead of this. I just thought I would bring this one back into the rotation. They're both ways of working on the back are excellent. And now move so that the balls are in a slightly different place. For me, I moved my body up so the balls go down. And now one of the lower balls by my waistline and the upper ball is just below where the shoulder blades end. This is also a good spot. There's lots of good spots. And let's do one more spot of your choice. You can go back up higher if you want, or you can just keep going down. For me, I've got the one of the balls is right above my pelvis, and the other one is in my actual tightest spot, which is the lower thoracic. All right, let's take the balls out. Once again, lie flat on your back, getting ready for the warm-ups. Maybe do a few more circling motions with your pelvis. And now you can do a pelvic tilt that involves a little bit more of your lower back. So this time, arch your back so that your lower ribs even lift off the floor, but your shoulders stay on the floor. And then push the waist into the floor and just gently lift your hips a little bit. So that's a bigger version of the pelvic tilt that we did before. Okay, now bring both knees into your chest, widen them apart a little bit and hold them with your hands, and rock from side to side. And then lift your legs up and shake your feet. And circle your feet. So that means the ankles are the focus. So you're not circling your whole leg. You're just circling as if you're drawing a big circle in the air with your toes. And then bend and stretch your legs, alternating between the toes pointing and the heels reaching up. And then leaving your legs in the air, but they don't have to be straight. Let's do the pop-ups. So you're gonna swing your feet gently back towards your head, which helps lift the hips off the floor. But really what we wanna do is use the lower stomach muscles to do that lift. Keep your shoulders on the floor, keep your neck as relaxed as you can. And just do a few more repetitions of this. And then bring the block between your knees. Knees are bent with your feet at least as high as your knees or higher. Shoulders spread to the sides, pressing down into the floor. And then go side to side with your legs. And you can choose how fast you do this and also how far over you go. You don't get all the way to the floor because this is mostly about strengthening the oblique stomach muscles. And if you went to the floor, they probably would stop working. So we're trying to strengthen them. And you can choose, again, how fast to go. I recommend not going super slow because it's very agonizing to do it that way. But sometimes I test myself by going to one side and just stopping for a moment. I mean, one breath, really, and then coming back. So when you're over on the side, you're really strengthening those obliques, which have to support the whole weight of your legs. Okay, back to center. So as you can see, I encourage you to improvise and try out variations of any of the exercises that we do. Okay, and now windshield wiper. Bring your arms alongside your head. Widen your feet on the mat and take your right knee across, stretching the whole right side. Feel your breath. Mostly in the side ribs now. Back up to center, left knee comes across. The right knee stays pointing straight up. It doesn't flop off to the side. I like to help support the sacrum by keeping that right leg vertical, the second leg. Stretch the whole side body, feeling as deeply as you can. Maybe you'll even feel your psoas here, deep inside the belly and across the front of the hip. Back to center, first side, second time. You can add the pull with your other hand if you want. And put the heel of your left foot onto the right knee as it comes across. And then second side, possibly using your heel and your other hand to help the stretch get a little more intense. Back up and pause and just feel. Maybe do a couple more pelvic wiggles. Now the feet are hip-width apart and parallel, and you want to balance the four corners of the feet, which we will review later. But I think most of you know what I'm saying, what I mean when I say that. And tuck your shoulders under. Press down into the feet to lift your hips. Tuck your shoulders under again. And then you can choose your arm position. Keep the elbows straight with the palms up, or bend them with the palms facing in, or clasp them behind your back and push down with them. So remember your feet to balance the weight on the four corners, and then lift as high as you can with your hips and your chest. And then come down onto a block. Your hips are raised up. You have a moment of resting in supported bridge pose. And then lift your right knee to your chest, straighten the leg up, bring it all the way down. And as the heel touches the floor, press your thigh down and gently pull up through your abdomen and ribs. So again, you're lengthening the psoas. Pull the left knee into your chest, either just with your legs muscles or with your hand. And then maybe straighten up the leg in the air. You feel ready for that. And then put both feet flat and rest again in the neutral position. Take the left knee up, straighten the leg, and all the way down to the floor. With the heel on the floor, press your thigh down. And you'll feel the effect of that further up into the hip joint and pelvis and even into your lumbar spine. Pull up gently through your abdominals and then lift your right knee towards your chest. And then, if you want, you can straighten that right leg up into the air and bend it again. Do that. a few times. Okay, both feet flat, remove the block, and do a little pelvic wiggling. And then bring your belt in, put the belt around your right foot, and as you stretch up through the leg, the most important thing is that you get the leg straight. That's the essence of this pose. But there's other things we can also consider. One, of course, the next one is the pelvic tilt. So whether you keep your left leg bent or you straighten it, I do recommend trying to straighten it, but maybe that's too intense for some of you. Whatever your leg position is for the left leg, you can still do an anterior tilt of your pelvis, lifting the waistline slightly off the floor as you put more weight in the lower part of the pelvis. Then another thing to think about is your shoulders and your neck, because many times we tend to tense up the shoulders, maybe in response to the feeling, the sensation in your leg as it's stretching. So see if you can remain calm and neutral in your shoulders and neck and head. You can roll your head side to side anytime, pull on the belt any amount that you want to get a strong stretch all the way down the leg. And then lift your left leg off the floor a few inches and hold it. Then put it down and take the right leg out to the right without the left hip coming off the floor. So that'll determine how far you go. Roll your head side to side and keep both shoulders down away from your ears. Your front chest is broad. And then lift your left leg off the floor any amount, possibly, a foot or 12 to 18 inches. And put it down and come back across now with your right leg crossing over the midline, maybe just 1/3 of the way towards the floor. So you're essentially still keeping the leg vertical. And then widen both your hips. So the left one will press into the floor. The right one will move out to the side, the right hip, just a little bit. And that will align the whole outer edge of the leg that's getting the stretch in a good way. And then lift your left leg up. Observe neck and head and shoulders so you don't build tension there that's unnecessary. Okay, put the left leg down. Remove the belt and move your hips a few inches to the right. And then bend your right knee across, resting your left hand on it. So here, as we do in every twist, we want to elongate the axis. In this case, the axis includes your leg and, of course, your whole spine. So get a sense of that inside, the line from your head to your hips to your left foot. And then you can increase the twist with that support of the axis. You can increase the twist by just gently pulling on your bent knee as you reach out with the other arm to the right. Okay, all back to center now. You've done the right side. Feel it as you rest for a moment. And then leg back up. So first step, straighten the left leg really strongly. So you can touch your quadricep muscles right above the knee. They should be firm. So with this exercise, this asana particularly, you want to engage the muscles. I mean, I'll say that throughout the class, but this one's particularly important. And then tilt your pelvis so the waist lifts off the floor. Stretch the other leg straight if you can. And pushing that other leg, the right leg, down is going to help you keep the pelvic tilt. And then pull on the belt to whatever degree you want. And check the tension level in your neck and shoulders so that you can let go of anything you don't need. And then lift the right leg off the floor. Keep breathing smoothly. Put the right leg down and turn out the left leg, taking it to the side while keeping your right hip still down on the floor. Shoulders are broad. If your neck feels like it's tightening up, you can roll it side to side. Now lift the right leg up off the floor, maybe a little higher. In this particular position, it's a little harder, so you can lift it higher, which is actually easier than keeping it close to the floor. And then put it down and come across the midline with your left leg, straightening the knee again. Widen through both hips. Right hip pushes down into the floor. Left hip moves off to the left. Even just the smallest amount will make a difference. Recharge the straightening of both knees. Roll your head. And then lift your right leg off the floor. And put it down. Remove the belt. Move your hips to the left and bring your left bent knee across, resting your right hand on it. And now right away, check your axis of the twist from your foot to your pelvis to your head. One long straight line. Your head can face straight up or it can turn a little bit to the right, that's fine. But really reach through your heel of the right leg. And then you can gently increase the twist by pulling on the knee with your hand. Back to center. And then do some wiggling of your pelvis and spine before we turn over. Okay, so we're going to go over onto face down and do forearm plank. So you're going to have your hands clasped and your elbows under your shoulders. Tuck your toes under behind you. Press your forearms into the floor and isometrically pull your forearms back a little bit, and notice that that will stretch your ribs forward away from your hips. So this is another version of the up and out theme that we're focusing on a little bit today. So pull your ribs forward, pull your legs back to get length in that part of the body that's often compressed, the whole lower back and hips. And then lift yourself up into the forearm plank, looking straight down at the mat. The hips, hopefully about the same height as your shoulders, not higher. Strong support from the front of your belly and from your shoulders, of course. And then rock forward and back on your toes a little bit. And come down. So that's forearm plank. I recommend doing it every day. And also some of the other things we've done so far, every day. Okay, point your fingers straight ahead. Elbows are shoulder width apart. Again, lengthen your ribs forward away from your hips and lift yourself up, pressing into your hands for Cobra number 1. We're only going to do 2 Cobras today because we're going to do Shavasana. So really lift your chest. Look up just a little bit. And then come all the way down to the floor and move your hands back so they're level either with your head or your shoulders. Squeeze your shoulder blades together and lift up. Now there's a little different dynamic going on in your shoulders. So you need to really pull them down away from your ears and see if you can pull your chest forward. As you reach back through your toes, look up a little bit. We want to have each part of the spine participating in the Cobra. And then come down. Now for Shavasana, you can put another blanket for padding under your pelvis if you want, because this pose has only the pelvis supporting on the floor and the rest of the body lifts up. So you can get a lot of pressure in your belly and pelvic bones. So you're welcome to put a blanket under you now. And then stretch your arms to the sides, palms facing down, maybe slightly below, angled downward towards your legs, but not all the way in against your body. And your forehead's on the floor. And then you squeeze your shoulder blades together and activate all the muscles down your legs. And then lift up first with your arms, and then your head, and then your legs. See if you can get your ribs off the floor. And come down. Okay, let's push back into child's pose. Widen your knees, bring in a block for your head, and bring your hips back towards your feet as far as you can. If you have knee trouble, you can keep your hips up higher so you don't bend the knees as much. And rock very gently from one side to the other. This again is good for understanding any pelvic asymmetries. Okay, let's come up and do some lunging. So bring the blocks in for your hands if you wish. And with your hands and knees on the floor, extend your spine, arching a little bit, and then curve your spine. And go back and forth like that. Doing as a large a movement as you can, curving and arching. Okay, and then step your right foot forward. Widen the back knee a little bit. Again, lift your head and chest up out of the arms and shoulders so that you're not collapsing down and crunching around your shoulders. And then tuck your toes under the back leg and lift the back knee off the floor. So you're in the basic lunge. You've made pretty much a right angle, 90-degree angle with your front knee. The back leg is straight. And then with a lift in your pelvic floor, gently and carefully bend the back knee and bring it down to the mat and back up again. Very light touch when you get there. It's not actually putting weight into the back knee. Okay, let's do that with the other leg. So step forward with your left leg, back with your right. Arrange the front leg in roughly 90-degree bend. Extend your spine forward and feel that shape. Pelvis is squarely facing the front of the mat. Both legs are parallel. And then gently bring the back knee down several times to the mat, up and down. And hold strong with your pelvic floor muscles so that you can touch lightly when you get to the floor. Okay, now go back to the first side and let's do the heel swivel. So bring the blocks or your hands on the inside of the front leg, straighten it and lift up so only your heel's on the floor. The back heel goes down. And then you do a circular movement with your hips slowly to find the different parts of the hamstrings. Okay, and then face the front of the mat again. Put the back knee down on the floor. And now we're going to twist and pull the back foot with the opposite hand. So you're going to leave your left hand on the mat or the block. Reach around with your right hand and catch your left foot and pull it in towards your hips and turn to the right. All right, let's do both those things on the other side. So come up, put your left leg forward, right leg back. Blocks or your hands come into the inside of your front leg. Pull the leg straight and come up onto your heel. And then the back foot goes flat to the floor. And then you make a half circle with your left hip, turning the leg in, turning the leg out. So this is a way to find the different parts of the hamstring and also feeling the hip. And then face the front of the mat with the back knee on the floor. And your right hand's going to stay on the floor or the block. Reach around with your left hand to catch the right foot. And pull it in toward your hips as you twist to the left. A thigh stretch plus twist. Position your right hand so that you can use it for support without collapsing onto it. So actually what I like to do is move my hand forward a little bit, because it means I can feel more open in my front chest. Okay, let's do downward dog and full arm plank now, so you can move the blocks out of the way. Place your hands with the fingers turned out slightly. Tuck your toes under, inhaling lift, and exhaling pull back into full down dog. And move your hips over to one side and over to the other side as a side body stretch. Okay, come back to center with your hips. Come forward into plank pose, reaching your collarbones forward, your legs back, and then back to down dog, and forward to plank, and back to down dog, and forward to plank, and back to down dog, and then step your feet forward, widening them to the edges of the mat. Bend your knees and rest your forearms on your knees and extend your spine forward. And then push down into the floor to come up. All right, let's do a simple standing back bend. So I'm going to step to the face to the side so you can see. We're going to attempt to back bend just the upper back and leave the hips over the feet. What tends to happen if the upper back is stiff is that your body automatically makes a compensation and moves the hips way forward so you can turn your face up without involving this upper part of the back very much. So our focus here is to try to get the movement into this upper half of your back, between your sternum and your navel, sort of the middle to upper. I like to have my hands clasped behind, but if you want to have your hands on your hips, that's okay. Starting out, pulling your shoulder blades together, reach down energetically from your hips to your feet. So you're really aware of that support in your legs, and you know where your hips are. Try to have them symmetrically facing forward. And then lift your chest up and out of the pelvis, tilt your sternum up as if you have eyes in the front of your upper ribs, and then also gaze up with your head without dropping the head down. So the head doesn't just flop back, you arch it back with some support on all sides of the neck. And come back. So I recommend doing that one every day too. Okay, let's do some balance awareness now. So just step from one foot to the other. Lifting one knee up. And then let's do a side step. And try to really feel the soles of your feet. We're going to review the four corners in just a minute. Swing the leg across, the one that you're not stepping onto. Okay, now with your hand possibly touching a chair or the wall, bring your leg forward and back in a slow swinging movement. And this will cause your upper body to tilt a little bit, and that's good. See if you can remain strong and steady in the standing leg, and possibly let go with your hand. And notice, as you're doing this, where is the demand for strength? It's in the standing leg and the abdomen. Other side. Okay. Now we're going to take a moment to go upside down. So you're going to want your mat to be perpendicular to the wall. So take time to change it if you need to. And then you come down, facing away from the wall, come down on all fours with your feet about 4 inches away from the wall. Or no, closer than that, maybe, close to the wall. And then go into a version of down dog, which is going to feel too crowded because of the space you have between your hands and your knees. Come up with your hips and then see if you can walk up the wall with your feet, coming strongly onto your arms and letting your head hang down. Okay, and come down. So that was a quick one, but I think it's always good to go upside down on a regular basis and also keep your arm strength. That's why I like to include those inversions. Now, let's come up and put a block at each end of your mat. Widen your stance. Now, you might have needed now to change the mat orientation in your space. Turn the right leg out. Left foot is parallel, so the pelvis turns slightly to the right. Lift up through your front spine, arms out to the side, and bend your right knee until it comes into a right angle, or at least the knee is directly over the ankle. And you can always wiggle your back foot further away if you need a wider stance. So how would you know if you need a wider stance? You would know that when you bend your knee, it goes way beyond your ankle. Then you come back up and you take a wider stance. So that when you bend your knee, it lands right over the ankle. Look towards the right and expand from the pelvis energetically throughout the body. And then bring your forearm to your right thigh, roll the left shoulder back. And let's just pause here, feeling your feet, your hips and knees, your spine. Roll the spine up towards the ceiling a little bit, rolling your left shoulder back. And then we'll go on. You can put your hand down on the block or the floor. Take the left arm up and over your ear. So you can pause in any of those sequential steps because the pose is complete in any of those phases. Notice the strength you're using in your hips and your spine and your core. And then do a little bounce and spring up. Other side. Pause for a moment. Both legs are parallel. Feeling the energy in your body that comes from that pose. And then turn your left leg out. The legs and hips are turned to the left, but the waist is coming back to face center and everything above the waist supported that way. Arms out to the side. Inhale and exhale. Bend the left knee. Pausing when the knee is directly over the ankle. Widening your stance if necessary. And then your chest and spine lift straight up from the pelvis. You gaze to the left with just your head. So this is warrior pose, number 2. Obviously builds strength. Okay, bring your forearm to your thigh, leaning to the side. And you can push with your forearm a little bit to widen the knee more, getting an additional stretch in your adductors. And you can stay here for your final pose if you wish. Or you can bring your hand down to the block, roll your right shoulder back. Stretch the arm up straight. And this could be your final pose. Or the actual classical final pose is the arm near the side of the head, completing the diagonal line. From your hand to your shoulder, to your hips, to your back foot. And then do a little pulse and inhale, come up. Turn the feet forward and step them together. Okay, we're going to review the four corners of the feet now, and then do another couple of standing poses. So, the four corners go in this sequence: inner heel, base of the little toe, base of the big toe, and outer heel. Standing on 2 feet, we'll focus on 1 foot at a time. Lift up the foot you're going to work with and put only the inner heel down. Keep that down and go across to the base of the little toe. And that's tricky because, you know, your whole foot wants to go down, but you try to keep the other 2 corners waiting for their turn. Notice that you've used a lot of muscles in your foot already, and now more come, so you're going to widen out to press the big toe mound down, and then you're going to go from the big toe to the outer heel. And then carefully, mindfully put your weight on that foot and feel it, possibly taking your other foot off the floor for balance. And then put the other foot down. And just for a moment before we do the second foot, feel if there's a difference right now in your awareness of the feet. Okay, so with the second foot, put only the inner heel down. And then go across to the base of the little toe. Trying not to lose the inner heel, keep it down. And then go across to the base of the big toe. So that's a really important pass because it widens the front of your foot, which we need for balance. And so often the shoes we wear compress the front of the foot. And the foot gets used to being in that compressed position and therefore does not support you very well. Okay, so now from the big toe mound, go up over to the outer heel, keeping all 4 corners down and the arch in the middle lifting. Come on to 1 foot as much as you can. Maybe you still need to touch with the toes of the other foot, but try to see how much you can support yourself on those 4 corners. Okay, and then put both feet down and just feel the effect. Not only feel the effect in your feet, but also your legs, your hips, your spine, your shoulders, and even your mind. It really does give us stability to have the 4 corners of the feet working properly. Okay, now we're going to use the chair for warrior 1 and 3. So bring the chair in facing its back away from you. Step your right foot under the back of the chair. Step your left foot back with a very slight turn out, hips facing forward. Remember the 4 corners of the feet. And you can observe as we go through any of the standing poses, if there's a tendency for you to always go to the outside edge or always go to the inside edge, so that you learn that about yourself and you can reestablish more balance between the 4 corners gradually. Bend the front knee. Feel the heel of the back foot pressing towards the floor. Maybe it's pulled up a little bit off the floor. Maybe you can continue to touch the floor. And then with your hands touching the chair lightly, grow your spine out of your pelvis. The legs are doing their job. They're kind of lowering to the floor to some degree because you bent the front knee. But the spine goes up. And then remember the arching practice we did. Shoulder blades pulling in, chest lifting. As you bend your head back to look up, do not just drop it back because you'll lose ability for breathing and talking. So as you get into the arch, say a few words, And then see if you can let go with one hand or both. You might want to look forward as you do that test for balance. And then if it's going well, then you can look up again. Okay, look straight ahead, hands on the chair back, step your right foot back, and come over the top of the chair, resting your hands on the seat and lifting your back leg up. Remember the four corners of both feet, and then release your right hand and stretch it forward. This is Warrior 3 variation. And then reach back with your hand and see if you can catch your left foot and turn a little bit to the right. Okay, both feet on the floor. Stand up and just pause to feel. Probably those poses increased your heart rate. Okay, left leg forward, foot under the chair, right leg back, slightly turned out, but the pelvis faces forward in both of these poses that we're doing. Bend the front knee to be over the ankle. Remember the four corners of the feet, especially spreading between the big toe and the little toe. And then start to lift your chest, making a back bend shape in at least the bottom 2/3 of your spine for now. And then still holding the chair, let's get a back bend that goes all the way up through your head. You've got the chair for balance. You're maximizing the back bend, but not letting your head flop, keeping a support in the front and the back and the sides so that you can still speak. And then look straight ahead and see if you can release one hand or both, stretching them to the sides. And then lift your chest and create any amount of that back bend, again, without the support of your hands on the chair. Okay, look forward. Touch the chair and step back with your left foot. Come over the back of the chair, raise your right leg back, and pause here for a couple of breaths, checking that your pelvis faces straight down. Remember the four corners of the feet. And then lift your left arm, stretch it forward so that you're on one hand and one foot. Big strength required in your middle body. And then reach back and hold your right foot with your left hand and twist your shoulders and head any amount to the left. Pressing your foot back into your hand. Okay, now come up to standing on 2 feet and move the chair so that you can take a wide stance and lean into the seat of the chair. So the chair is in front of the middle of your mat. Widen your feet apart, parallel feet. Again, four corners. Touch the front of your hip joints, knowing that that's where you're going to bend. Lift your chest up and out of the pelvis. Bend forward and bring your hands to the chair seat at first. So this is a relatively mild forward bend. And then you can decide for yourself how much further down to go. What feels good to me is to bend down onto my forearms, stay there for a few breaths, pushing my thighs apart, and then rest my head. If you want to go further down, of course, you can just come off the chair and hang your head down with your hands on the floor. Now, before we come up, just gently bend one knee, widening it out to the side. Your hips will shift to that direction. Just feel that stretch. And then do the other side, bend the knee, move your hips in that direction, and feel the stretch. And then come back to center and walk your feet in and come up to standing. Okay, we're going to do relaxing back bend over the bolster, and then sit up again to do Ustrasana, and then we'll do a restorative pose for our finishing. So bring in a rolled blanket or a bolster. And then some of you will probably want a block for your head, and some may want to have a folded blanket under your hips so that the bolster is a little bit gentler in its pressure on your back. So I'm going to place a folded blanket on the foot end, the leg end of the bolster. So the bolster is going across your mat, and you're going to lie with your spine over it. So as you lie back over the bolster, make sure that the pressure of the bolster is affecting your middle back, not only your lower back. Some of you will be more comfortable with your head raised up on a block or a folded blanket, and that's totally fine. So at first, just rest with your hips flat on the blanket. Arms are to the side above the bolster. You can roll your head side to side. And now do some of those pelvic movements that we did earlier. Possibly circling your pelvis, possibly tilting it to one side and then the other. So just do some playful, slow movements, which really will show you anything that you need to know about the difference between the two sides. And then come back to the center. So notice how the bolster or the rolled blanket that you have under your back and ribs help you to lift the ribs up and out of the pelvis. This would be another everyday thing if you can find the moment to do it. It's a wonderful stretch. Take a couple of deep breaths, noticing how the breath feels different with this back position. Okay, let's roll off the bolster and come up and temporarily put the bolster to the side because we'll probably use it for Shavasana. And then unfold the blanket a little bit so it's a good padding for your knees. And actually some of you might want to use the bolster for this pose as well. So it's right there near you. I'll demonstrate with the bolster so you see how that works. Come onto your knees on the blanket. And for those who want to use the bolster, your toes are pointed so that your ankles are almost on the floor, and you put the bolster over your ankles. And that way, when we go into Ustrasana, you have a higher surface to touch with your fingers. Others will want to do the variation in which you tuck your toes under, and that lifts your heels higher so they're easier to reach. And then the full pose is toes are pointed, and you reach back and catch your heels. So 3 choices. You can choose which is best for you. Looking straight ahead, rise up out of your pelvis, lifting your spine up and out. Shoulder blades pull together, chest lifts, your head slightly tilts back, maintaining support in the front of the neck. And then reach back with one hand for either the bolster or your heels, other hand, and then lift your chest and let your head go back further. And then make sure you can talk or sing a little song. And come up. Pause, looking straight ahead. We'll do it one more time. And if you can remember which hand you took down first, try the other side. So lift your chest, shoulder blades pull together, curl your shoulders back, reach back with that hand, other hand, and now you can lift your chest more and take your head back further. Feel pressure down through your feet to help you lift your pelvis forward, and then lift your chest as high as you can. Okay, and then come up. And let's do a little twist, twist to child's pose. Or no, this is not really child's pose because your hips stay up over your knees. Move one hand forward, put the side of your head on the floor as you reach the other hand to the side behind your first arm. This stretches the muscles of your back that you use to do the pose with Shavasana. Other side. And come up. Now I invite you to take the props however you like them for Shavasana. I am going to use a folded blanket, which is kind of the shape of a small bolster, under my spine, and I'm going to have my knees over the bolster. You can choose your own favorite. And then lie back. Arms are to the side, palms facing up. Gently tuck your shoulder blades under. Roll your head side to side. And release in the center. We go back to the focus on the breath now. And we'll repeat the 3 directions. So at first, you're lengthening your torso with the breath, inhaling down into the belly and up into the top ribs. And let that length happen on the front and the back of the spine. And then breathe in a way that expands from front to back. And then breathe in a way that expands from side to side. And then let your breath just continue naturally, sending relaxation, energy to all parts of your body. With each exhalation, release more. Focus more on your inhalation now to bring the energy back, and do some gentle movement of your choice. Bend your knees and roll to the side. And come up to sitting. So now that we've done a practice with many different poses and focusing on a lot of details, it's a good time to come back to your overall feeling in your body and your mind. Just to check in with yourself in that way before you go on to the rest of your day. Acknowledging how this yoga practice enlivens your body and helps you with many different types of body issues that we all have, stiffness or asymmetries, or just a feeling of heaviness. So let's chant one Om with gratitude for this practice. Join your hands together. Inhale. Om. Thank you. Namaste.